John Craxton on the White Mountains of Crete. How did he arrive there?
Yes, and on his motorbike, and amazingly, that's the only test he ever passed in his entire life. No examinations, no qualifications, not even in art. He always wanted to be this person in Crete. And the astonishing thing was that he was this person from a really small child. He was totally untrainable. He hated schooling. He wouldn't do anything he didn't want to do. He only painted and drew, and he always wanted Greece. He loved the mythology of Greece. He loved. He was lucky enough to see treasures in museums. He saw an El Greco painting when he was 12, and the family had no connection with Greece, but he just identified with it and really wanted to be Greek himself.
Extraordinary. And here are his boots and his tagari and his walking stick. How did he arrive all the way there?
Yes, it's amazing. He, as I say, he always wanted to be in Greece. He was at 16. He was drawing in Paris and hoping to get on to Greece, but in fact, the Second World War got in his way, and so with much irritation, he went back to England and was trapped for 6 years. And as soon as he could escape, he did. And he was a person who always knew what he wanted to do, and he fulfilled his dream. And from the moment he arrived in Greece until his death, he really only painted Greek pictures. And he was totally transfixed by the light, the life, and the landscapes of his adopted country.
Well, let's take it from the start. Let's look at his childhood. How old is he here?
He's 21. This is very much a wartime picture. You can see he's looking rather nervous and warily at himself as the self-portraitist. And he's actually ill. He had undiagnosed tuberculosis, which it got him out of army service. And he's painting himself all through the war. The portraits that he did were basically of himself. And he looks very sad and lonely. In fact, he was having quite a party life. But in his art, he's actually focused on entrapment, on dislocation, and actually wanting to escape. And you see it all in that picture. And it's particularly clear when you look at the picture 2 years later, when he's got to Greece in May 1946. And it's an awakening. It's a rebirth. He's in the place he wanted to be always, and it's already living up to his expectations, exceeding his expectations. He's totally happy.
He's bathed in blue.
Yes, bathed in Greek blue and in light, Greek sunlight. He hated the dark of England. He thought that England was just foggy, cold, wet, and he just didn't like it at all. He liked bright sunlight.
This painting is also quite dark, isn't it?
Yes, that set the model for all the wartime pictures. This is called Poet in Landscape, and he did it when he was 19. He'd just been he just failed his army medical, and he went home and he produced this picture, his first masterpiece, in 19, over Christmas week 1941. And although it's called Poet in Landscape, it's basically him waiting for the results of his army medical, reading William Blake's poems and hoping he's going to fail, and he did fail. And then he went home and did this. And it's a study of an artist trapped in a wartime scene. It turns on its head a romantic idea of a moonlit, bucolic scene. This is a scene of danger, because the moon is now known as a bomber's moon. It lets in the Luftwaffe and people are in danger. And the tree itself has become a machine of war, and it's marching across the landscape, and it's stabbed the leaf. So it's a complete danger in this, what looks at first like a pastoral scene. It's a picture of menace.
Whereas this one over there is a real pastoral scene, yes. Very bright and colourful.
Yes. This began as a watercolour, of a Dorset scene. The family house was bombed in London. He had this wonderful family, very supportive, musical, bohemian, and they were put up in a little flat in London. He went to stay with friends in the country, and this was the house he lodged in. And it began as a watercolour, but then he was given some sample tins of Rippling enamel paint, and he reworked it. Picasso used that paint, so he loved it already. And he just went over the watercolour with his enamel paints to brighten it up, and as an idea of what Greece would be. And it may not exactly be what he was headed for, but certainly the blue is very, I think, very distinctive, and it shows the life he wants, really, and can't yet have.
So this is Greece imagined?
Greece imagined, that's right. This is done in 43, 44, and he's simply trapped for the rest of the war. Even at the end of the war, he can't get away for another year because of post-war restrictions. But then he finally manages it in May 46. He has amazing luck all his life, and he had luck then because he was taken by the wife of the British ambassador to Athens from an exhibition he had in Zurich, and she was borrowing a bomber to replace curtains in the Athens embassy. It was in Milan. She got him to Milan, paid for his train fare, got him on the plane, and they flew into Athens in May 46, and his life was made on that day.
So let's see Greece realized in the next room.
Here we are in Greece. John always wanted to be.
And now, wasn't that from the first island he stayed in Greece?
It was. He spent a couple of weeks in Athens, and then he met Paddy Liferma, who recommended Poros. And so he went to Poros, which was his first Greek island, and he immediately loved it. And this is the sort of portrait he got into. He had done all these portraits of himself back in England, and now he stopped this focus on himself. He went into the world and to other people and the life around him. And Greek people loved having their portraits painted or drawn, and so he was very lucky. And this was a next-door neighbour of the house he lodged in Poros. She's 8, and she loved being portrayed, and I think it's a wonderful likeness.
Beautiful portrait. And what about the rest? What about this man?
Well, this man is a very important figure in the story. He was in the navy, but he was a sailor from. He was a butcher from Heraklion in Crete, and his major talent was that he was a fantastic dancer, and he was the star turn in the tavernas of Poros. And so Craxton, who had a taverna life, met him and liked him and loved his dancing, and eventually followed him back to Crete when he was demobbed. Craxton painted a lot of sailors and soldiers, and he would paint on anything to hand, and he even used a sailor's cap for a very nice image.
So is this the cap of the demobbed sailor?
Who knows? Who knows? A demobbed sailor, and there are lots of them. And
what about this?
This was a Palmyra head for an ancient piece that John bought in London, and he loved it dearly, and it was bequeathed to the Benaki Museum when he died. And I think you can see the influence he got from this man. The moustache is certainly reflected in many of the portraits here.
All taken in Crete?
All over Greece. He travelled all over, but certainly Crete became his first love as soon as he saw it.
So this portrait of an old man,
yeah.
This is a very Cretan image,
yes,
isn't it?
Yes, this is another Craxton masterpiece. From 47, he was paying annual visits to Crete. And in 48, 49, he spent long periods in the White Mountains tracking down the resistance comrades of his friend Paddy Liferma. And in a White Mountain village, he found this elderly man. And I think it's so powerful because, to me, not only is it a portrait of an old man, it's also a portrait of the White Mountains. It's a portrait and a landscape, and it's a complete portrait of Crete.
A geological quality to the face.
Yes, absolutely. Look at that. Look at the angles, the jagged nature, and the white of the beard. It's just what the White Mountains look like. These snow-capped mountains which astonish first-time visitors to Crete when they're in the sea. And the gaze of the man, look at what he's withstood. And John loved this sense of antiquity, running into modern times, ancient and modern, and it's all in that face, I think.
How long did the romance last?
Lasted all his life. Lasted all his life. He never lost it. He was very faithful to his dream, and it was very good to him too. He found himself in Greece in every way, as a person, as a painter, and he was always a joyful spirit. But certainly in Greece, he was a joy.
But he lost that joy, didn't he, at some point?
Yes, John Craxton was, he couldn't deal with any kind of authority, and he was a great joker, and he made fun of authority, and authority didn't like being made fun of. And when he moved to Crete finally after a lot of traveling around Greece, and in 1960, and he was set up for the rest of his life, but in 1967, the coup of the colonels in Athens did for him, because he had upset a local policeman by making fun of him, and the local policeman made sure that he was evicted. So John was kicked out in 1967. So the story of his life, which is a story from darkness into light and monochrome into colour, goes back to darkness, because he's expelled.
So that's the dark room over there, isn't it?
The next room. Well, this is the heart of the show, isn't it? And this is John in exile from Greece. He got to Edinburgh, Scotland, and he was commissioned to design this tapestry for a new university, Stirling, and he oversaw the production in the Edinburgh workshop. And it was supposed to take 6 months, but he was so demanding that it took 18, and he drove everybody mad. But he was so desperately trying to get into this work everything he felt about Greece, and his sadness really being apart from it all. And although it has every possible colour in it, I think there's a note of nostalgia, isn't there, and the separation.
And there is a dark side to it and a light side to it.
Yes, moonlight, sunlight, rain and brightness. It's the elements, it's fire, water, earth and air. And very, very abstractly, going up the side of the mountain, there is a goat which has climbed too close to the sun, and he's caught fire like Icarus, also like John Craxton, who told one joke too many and got kicked out of Greece. So he'd actually climbed too near the sun. And so this is, I think it's amazingly beautiful, and you can't stop John Craxton being joyful, but there is a note of regret in it for Greece at that time.
And when did he come back to Greece?
Well, he had no idea whether he would ever come back, but he came back in '76, and really it was the happiest gift of his life to get back to Greece. And I think his best paintings were in store.
Well, back to the light then.
Back to the light, back to the colour, back to Greece. Colour, sunshine, light, happiness. He is going now to make pictures that are the biggest and boldest and brightest of his career. He's been working on pictures like this before he was thrown out. And this is a memory of his life on Hydra, where he lived in the ancestral mansion of Nico Gika, his best painter friend in Greece, often with Paddy and Joan Lee Firma. And this is the view from the Gika house, and the house that burnt down ultimately in 1961. And John is away from the subject. He always wanted to paint away. He said the point of art is to make a new reality, not to be natural. Naturalism is the enemy. It has to be new. And so he put into this everything he felt about this scene, his memory, the essence of the picture. And he's painting in coloured light. So it's a sort of dazzle, the glitter on the sea.
On these landscapes, he superimposes the people he meets.
That's it. We're back here with the butcher he met in '46, and it's a memory of the market stall in Crete, where he also saw him. And here he is. It's become a very symbolic picture, I think, but it's also so true to life. Here he is with a bull's tail with which he will swish the flies off the meat. Smoking, of course. Everybody smoked. And the cage bird, and which looks as though it's flying free, perhaps. And this picture is new to the exhibition. It's never been hung before, and so I think it is a revelation. It's one of John's great works.
it's extremely ambitious in scale.
Very ambitious. His pictures are getting bigger, bolder, brighter as he gets ever more himself. And he's a friend of Francis Bacon by this time, and I think there's a certain link there. But he's always very much his own person, and his main influences are always Greek. So he goes back to Byzantine art, he goes back to ancient Greek art, Minoan art, and it's everything he loves about his adopted land.
And then, of course, the man and the landscape come together on this painting.
Yes.
Of the two boys on a beach.
On the swimming platform that he drew on Spilio Rocks. And this again is a memory from his time in the Geek House. And John did his drawings very, very quickly and his paintings really slowly. And he worked on this for 15 years before giving it up as a failure, and he turned it to the wall and never looked at it again. But I think it is one of the masterpieces of the exhibition. It was originally 3 figures in the setting sun, but now it's 2, and probably better for it. And John always put an element of contrast, of opposites in his pictures. And here you see the figure in light is the octopus figure, I think a modern figure, but also something out of mythology. And the figure in the foreground, resting perhaps just after bathing, but also there's an element, I think, that it could be something darker. And he drew it in the 1950s, when John was really working on this. There were a lot of young men who were crippled because they were deep-sea sponge divers, and they had no safety equipment, and they came up, sometimes they didn't come up at all, but came up with legs twisted. And I think this man has problems actually with a leg. So I think it's a contrast between vitality, vigour, youth, and disability.
So a seemingly simple picture is actually complex both in colour, morphologically, but also in meaning, in references.
Absolutely, there are always layers in Craxton. Craxton was also dismissive of explanation. He said all you need to appreciate his pictures are open eyes and an open mind, and you make your own conclusions. He was a very open person, and he thought that people should put their own feelings into his pictures. He wanted to share them. He didn't want to tell people how to look. So I'm always mindful of that when I'm explaining a picture. What I've just said about this picture is very much my reading of it, and Craxton could possibly disagree.
Thank you, Ian, for opening our eyes to John Craxton art.
Great pleasure. Thank you, George.